It wasn't a formal invitation, not really. It was more of a whisper, a rumor that spread through town like a slow-moving fog. The no-end house appeared once a year, on a quiet street you'd never noticed before. The challenge was simple but unexplained. Survive 9 rooms, get to the end. Collect $500. It sounded like a cheap gimmick, but the people who talked about it never laughed. Their eyes went distant. They spoke of friends who never came out the same. I never paid it much attention. A local legend to spook teenagers. But this year, the whisper felt different, louder, like it was calling to me. I saw flyers tacked to telephone poles, printed on cheap paper with stark black letters. The no-end house. 1 night only. Can you reach the end? No address. Just a vague street on the edge of town near the old woods. I told myself I wouldn't go. It was stupid. It was dangerous. But the thought burrowed into my mind and stayed. That night, a strange pull led me from my apartment. I didn't make a conscious decision. My feet just started moving. I drove toward the part of town nobody visits. Streets grew darker, houses farther apart. Then I saw it, a line of people. 20, 30, standing silently in front of a house that shouldn't be there. A perfectly average 2-story home, clean white siding, a neatly trimmed lawn, the most normal thing I'd ever seen. And that was the terrifying part. It didn't look haunted, it looked like home.
A man stood by the door taking money and explaining the rules. The house has 9 rooms, he said. You must go through them in order.
If you want to leave, just turn around and exit the way you came in. The doors will not be locked. You can leave at any time.
He said it like giving directions to the post office. No theatrical flair, just a man with a job.
A job sending people into a place that twisted them inside out. I paid my entry fee, my hand shaking as I handed him the crumpled bills. The front door clicked shut behind me with an unnerving finality. I was standing in what looked like a completely normal living room. There was a floral patterned sofa, a coffee table with some old magazines, and a lamp in the corner casting a soft, warm glow. The air was still. It smelled faintly of dust and lemon polish. I could hear the faint murmur of the people still waiting outside. It was all so ordinary. I felt a small wave of disappointment. I almost laughed at my own foolishness for getting so worked up over nothing. I walked through the room, my footsteps muffled by a thick beige carpet. On the wall opposite the front door was another door. It was plain white and had a simple brass handle. A small, neatly printed number 1 was tacked to the center of it. This was the first room. The goal was to get through 9. I took a deep breath, telling myself it was all just an elaborate prank. The real scares were probably behind the next door. They were just lulling you into a false sense of security. I put my hand on the doorknob. It was cool to the touch. I turned it and pushed the door open, stepping into the next chamber. The second room was identical to the first. Exactly identical. The same sofa, the same coffee table, the same lamp in the corner. Even the magazines were the same issues, laid out in the exact same way. The only difference was the number on the door ahead of me. This one had a 2 on it. A cold knot of unease began to form in my stomach. This wasn't a prank. This was something else. Something was wrong. I walked back to the door I had just come through. It was still there with the number 1 on it. I could still hear the muffled sounds from outside. I could leave. The man had said so, but I didn't. The curiosity was stronger than the fear. It had to be a trick of the mind, a clever use of space. Maybe the house was built in a circle. I had to know what was next. I had to see the trick for myself. The silence in this second room felt heavier, though. The air felt colder. I noticed something I hadn't seen in the first room. A small, dark stain on the carpet right next to the sofa. It looked almost like dried blood. I told myself it was just part of the show. I focused on the door with the number 2 and walked toward it, my heart starting to beat a little faster now. I pushed open the door marked 2 and stepped through. The next room was different. It was a child's bedroom. A small bed was neatly made in the corner. Shelves on the wall were lined with dusty toys. The wallpaper was peeling, showing faded patterns of cartoon animals. The air in here was thick and heavy, smelling of mothballs. Something sweet and sickly, like rotting flowers. The silence was absolute. The sounds from outside were gone. I was truly inside the house now. There was no turning back, or at least it felt that way. The door I came through clicked shut behind me, louder this time. On the wall, there was a framed photograph. It was a family portrait. A smiling mother, a proud father, a little girl with a missing front tooth. I squinted, leaning closer. My blood ran cold. The little girl was me. It was a photo from my childhood, one that sat on my mother's mantelpiece hundreds of miles away. How could it be here? My mind raced, trying to find a logical explanation. Had they researched me, stolen it? It seemed impossible. My hands started to tremble. This wasn't just a haunted house. This was personal. The house knew me. I backed away from the photograph, my eyes darting around the room. The toys on the shelf seemed to watch me. A teddy bear with one button eye stared blankly into the space where I stood. I felt a presence in the room, a heavy weight in the air that seemed to press down on me from all sides. I could hear something now, a faint rhythmic sound, thump, thump, thump. It was slow and steady, like a heartbeat. But it wasn't my own. It was coming from somewhere inside the walls, deep within the structure of the house itself. Panic began to set in. This was a mistake. A terrible, terrible mistake. I had to get out. I turned to the door I had entered, the one that should have led back to the living room. It was gone. The wall was solid, covered in the same peeling, faded wallpaper. There was only one other door in the room on the opposite wall. It had a large black number 3 painted on it. There was no choice. The only way out was forward. The thumping in the walls grew louder, more insistent. It felt like the house was alive, and it was waiting for me. My hand shook as I turned the knob on door number 3. It opened into a long, dark hallway. The air that rushed out was freezing cold, raising goosebumps all over my arms. The only light came from a single bare bulb hanging from the ceiling far down the hall, flickering erratically. The walls were bare concrete, damp and slick to the touch, and the noise was overwhelming. It was a cacophony of distorted sounds, static, whispers, a high-pitched whine that drilled into my skull. It was impossible to tell where it was coming from. It was everywhere. I took a hesitant step into the hallway. The door slammed shut behind me. The darkness was almost total, broken only by the strobing light of the distant bulb. The noise seemed to get louder with every step I took. The whispers became clearer. They were saying my name over and over again. My name. My name. The sound crawled under my skin, making my teeth ache and my vision swim. I wanted to cover my ears, but I knew it wouldn't help. The sound was inside my head. I forced myself to walk forward toward the flickering light. My feet splashed in shallow puddles of icy water that covered the floor. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever. Finally, I reached the end of the hall. The flickering bulb hung directly over another door, this one made of heavy steel with the number 4 stenciled on it in faded red paint. The noise was at its peak here, a physical force that made my whole body vibrate. The whispers were right in my ear now, intimate and chilling. I grabbed the cold metal handle of the door, desperate to escape the sound. I had to get out of this hallway. I didn't care what was on the other side. Anything had to be better than this auditory torture. With all my strength, I pulled the heavy door open. I stumbled through.